Yo, 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 yo. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. It's another edition of the NBA 2022 NBA team previews, man. Today we have the Detroit Pistons and we have the Memphis Grizzlies. I know it's NFL Sunday. A lot of people trying to get to the NFL. I am as well, but we're going to get into these two teams, man. Like I said, we're going to do two teams every single day. I was committed to it when I said it, and, I'm going to stick by that. So even on NFL Sunday, we got two teams that we're going to break down, and then we're going to get out of here. It's not going to be a long show, but I think it's going to be an informative show for sure. So real quick before we get started, I do want to make sure I post a link over on YouTube so people who can't chime in the Twitter space but got comments they want to make can definitely be able to see it. So I'm gonna pin that up top, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started, man. Like I said, two teams a day. Yesterday we broke down the Indiana Pacers and the Golden State Warriors. On Friday we did the Philadelphia 76ers and Sacramento Kings. And tomorrow we have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Portland Trailblazers. So people who are interested in, looking at these team previews, hearing what I have to say about them, hearing what other people in the gambling Twitter space have to say about them, definitely feel free to jump over on YouTube and check out those videos. I think it's a lot of insightful information for sure. That's going to all make us better bettors and better gamblers for sure, especially to start the season when the markets are a little, overpriced or underpriced. Definitely be able to hit on some over-unders, whether it's win totals, player prop, just, spreads, all those different things. So these NBA previews are just a quick highlight of what's transpired in the offseason for each team. I'll discuss additions and subtractions, a recap of last season, and expectations for this up-and-coming season. Like I said, if you miss any of these, you could definitely head over to YouTube as well. Why am I doing this? Just to bring people back up to speed and kind of refresh people's memory of what happened last season and to clarify roster moves as well. Last but not least, to make us all informed bettors, more informed bettors as well. I always like to say, if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready, right? So extremely excited for, just to do all these, for sure. So let's get into it, man. Let's just, no further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the East Coast team on here, the Detroit Pistons. This team's gonna look a little different than it did last year, man. They have I'll start with additions. They added Marvin Bagley III, who was already on the team. They re-signed him to a 3-year deal. Kevin Knox comes over from the Knicks. I don't know how much playing time he'll get. He didn't get that much time with the Knicks last year. But then they also signed Roddy McGruder, who was already on the team. He's coming back. And then they had that trade with the New York Knicks. So you get Alex Burke from that trade. Nerlens Noel came over from that trade. And you get a backup point guard in Kemba Walker to kind of be behind Cade Cunningham this year. After last year, they kind of struggled only having Killian Hayes. So I think all of those additions will be helpful. Kemba is a vet in the league now, so he'll definitely be able to, help Cade with his transition to be an ascending superstar, I think, in this league, soon to come. You also draft a guy in Jaden Ivey with the 5th overall pick. I think he's going to be, kind of sprung into that starting lineup early. And then you just bring over a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic via the trade with the Utah Jazz. So a lot of additions. They didn't lose much. They lost Luka Garza. He went to the Timberwolves. Jeremy Grant signed with the Blazers, and then Kelly Olynyk was traded recently, just a couple of days ago, to Utah in the trade for Bojan Bogdanovic. So as far as offseason notes, I do think that this team, I think they took the next step. Will it be a big step? No, it's going to still be a player developmental year over there in Detroit. But I think that, Dwayne Casey's a guy who can get the troops motivated. They're going to play hard. I do envision them covering a lot of spreads. I think drafting Jaden Ivey helps them out a lot. Like I said, he'd probably be instantly thrown into the starting lineup, and then they'll have Alex Burke to back him up and give him some bench production. But you get another year of development for guys like Sadiq Bey, Cade Cunningham, who another year of offseason experience, kind of being able to reflect, figure out what it is that they need to work on so that they can continue to develop, I think is only going to be helpful for this team. They're extremely young, so I'm not putting, a lot of onus and expectation on them to even make it to the play-in game. I don't think that's realistic for them, being that the Eastern Conference got so much better. But I do think this is a team that won't finish last. I don't think they'll finish last in the Eastern Conference like they have been doing over the recent years. If you look at the Eastern Conference last year, the Orlando Magic had the worst record in the NBA. They finished 22-60. The Detroit Pistons was only one game better and finished 23-59 last year. I think that the Detroit Pistons jump over teams like the Indiana Pacers, who won 2 more games than them last year. I don't think that they compete with the Wizards, who finished 35-47 last year and should have a healthy squad. So that should push them a little bit, give them a few more wins. But I do think that this Orlando team, this Detroit team is better than the Pacers, right? I mean, that's not saying a lot. They may even contend with the Charlotte Hornets, who I think takes a step back this year as well. I think that they play harder for their team than a team like the Charlotte Hornets getting Steve Clifford back last year. So I hope all that makes sense. As far as the last season recap, this team was a underdog juggernaut. I don't know if people remember, but people was cashing on, and I jumped on the party. I jumped on the bandwagon kind of late, but people were cashing from a betting perspective on this team covering spreads as an underdog, whether they were at home or on the road. In the middle of the season, they covered a lot of spreads. That was when Cade Cunningham was kind of coming into his own, kind of taking the league by storm and being extremely consistent. This year they add some depth at the center position. You get Nerlens Noel, who's a serviceable big man that can block shots, alter shots, rebound the ball well, to play alongside or behind Isaiah Stewart, Big Beef Stew. So I like that addition for him as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if this team won, 28 to 29 games. Last season, like I said, they finished 23-59. Projected win total this year is 27.5 on Caesars, 28.5 on DraftKings. So what they're saying is the books also anticipate the Detroit Pistons to be better than they were last year. And I would only be able to agree with that. I'm not, however, playing that team total at 27.5 because I do think that some of these teams, that we don't have high expectations for as far as even making it to the playing game, making it to the playoffs, making a deep run. I don't think that I think some of these teams will kind of pan out, blow up, trade away assets, even though I don't see that Detroit doing that, just so they can try to get to the number 1 pick and draft, take somebody high in the draft next year. I don't think Detroit is one of those teams, but I'm not really playing a lot of win totals for these teams that, don't have a high ceiling at all. Like Detroit win 30 games, I think that's a success. But if they win 25 and you take this win total over 26, 27.5, that's also, not out of realms of possibility. So I'm not playing that at all. But I do think, like I said, they play hard for Dwayne Casey. I am going to be looking to target guys like Cade Cunningham. Somebody's going to have to pick up that production for a guy like Jeremy Grant, who played well last year and, in his role. And now that he's on the Portland Trail Blazers. So you look at their schedule. They also have the 5th most difficult schedule based on strength of schedule, which doesn't do a lot of benefit for them. The Pistons are it's going to be tough for the Pistons this year. It's going to be really, really tough for them to make, a lot of noise. Like I said, the Eastern Conference got better. It's no shade to the Detroit Pistons fans. It's just more so that this team, they're still in a rebuilding mode. Cade Cunningham is still extremely young. Sadiq Bey is still extremely young. Even guys like Marvin Bagley, the third, is, these guys are all continuing to work on their game. And it's going to be interesting to see if Dwayne Casey can take them to the next step of just winning 5 more games. So as far as their anticipated schedule, they start the season off at home against the Orlando Magic. Then they go to New York. They get the Pacers, the Wizards. So not a lot of, extremely difficult games. I think that they could win a few of those games for sure, especially when you're looking at the Pacers. Everybody gets up for the game in the Garden with the Knicks, and going to Washington, I don't think that they win that game. But these are all teams that aren't projected to, make the playoffs or even have a deep run at all. So just things to kind of take into consideration. After that, their schedule gets extremely difficult. They host Atlanta twice back to back. And then they also get Golden State at the end of a 3-game homestand before traveling to Milwaukee twice and then coming back home to host Cleveland. So we go from 4 games at the beginning of the season against, not, the cream of the crop in the East, teams that we predict to or project to, or at least I project to not make it deep into the playoffs or even make the play-in game. To then you get, 6 games after that, with some of the better competition in the Eastern Conference and in the Western Conference, having Golden State. So Golden State, Atlanta twice, Milwaukee twice, and Cleveland twice doesn't bode well for them at all. Then they get Boston, Oklahoma City, New York, Boston again, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Raptors. So not I don't expect this team to win. I do expect this team to cover some NBA point spreads, though. That's what I will say. I think that they'll be heavy underdogs like they were last year and laying the points. Like I said, I think they play hard for Dwayne Casey. This team, they'll come out with a chip on their shoulder, being the underdogs, and cover some of those point spreads like we saw them do last year. So that's my quick synopsis on the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm sorry, the Memphis Grizzlies, on the Detroit Pistons and how I see this season kind of going for them. If you guys got any comments, definitely feel free to, definitely request up or chime in over on YouTube. But if I don't have anything, like I said, I know it's NFL Sunday. I'm not trying to keep people, just trying to educate people and bring people up to speed. So I'll shift over into the Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll shift over. So, Memphis Grizzlies, man, this team is going to be interesting and fun this year again, I think. We saw them supersede expectations last year. I don't think anybody had them finishing as high as they finished in the Western Conference. And then they made a deep run in the playoffs as well before losing to the Golden State Warriors in the semifinals. After losing game one and then, winning game two and eventually being blown out in that last game. So as far as the Memphis Grizzlies this year, I think the team is going to take a small step back. And here's the reason why. As far as additions, they do get Tyus Jones. He agreed to a 2-year deal. We, definitely warranted. We saw what he did last year when Ja Morant couldn't play. This team was extremely effective no matter who they had on the floor. I think you could describe them, using words like resilient. A lot of key guys missed key time last year. And this team, just kind of next man up mentality kind of stepped up and played well. So you get Tyus Jones, who comes back. I know they're extremely excited to have him back. John Conchar, if you remember he was an assassin for a large portion of the season, being able to knock down the 3-point ball. He agreed to a 3-year extension as well. Ja Morant got the bag, as we know, 5-year extension for him. And then they draft. They do pretty well in the draft. I don't know if these guys will see exponential playing time. I'm talking about Jake Lavaria, I think is how you pronounce his name, and then David Roddy. They got the draft rights from him via trade. So I don't, and then of course he's not a big addition, but bringing in a guy like Danny Green who has championship pedigree, he's gonna miss a lot of this year though. He tore his MCL and ACL in his knee. In Game 6 of the NBA Eastern Conference semifinals against the Miami Heat. But you do get him in the trade for DeAnthony Milton. Of course, if people don't remember, DeAnthony Milton was traded, and I think he's a big component for this team. A guy who came off the bench, could definitely fill it up. We saw what he did from the 3-point line. His ability to be able to, just create for others and be a solid contributor off that bench last year. They also lose Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson went to the Timberwolves, call him slow-mo. I think, he was a guy who brought some veteran leadership in, playing for San Antonio for so many years in his career. So losing key guys, I think DeAnthony Milton and Kyle Anderson, definitely affect this team, but it also allows some of the other guys to kind of grow as well. And the Memphis Grizzlies have done an excellent job of drafting, right? All these players that we talked about, they've kind of used that blueprint of the Golden State Warriors and just draft really, really well. The Jared Jackson Jr.'s of the world, Brandon Clarks of the world, Ja Morant of the world, Dylan Brooks, the list goes on and on. So now they have to pay these guys, and they're starting to give them these big contracts. Jared Jackson Jr. got his last year. Ja Morant got his, this year. So you're not going to be able to keep everybody though. They're just not going to be able to keep everybody. So you're going to have to pick and choose. And I think that's one of the reasons why they let a guy like DeAnthony Milton go. Do I necessarily agree with the move? No. Can it bite him in the butt? I think so. But I don't think that, it plays a big deal for them, this season. Like they'll still have key contributors. It'll also open up the role for other guys to step up and take over the minutes that Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Milton played last year. So as far as offseason notes, I talked about Danny Green, who was required via the trade for DeAnthony Milton, and the draft rights for David Roddy. He may not play for the entire season after tearing the ACL. And I'm sorry, I said MCL. He tore his ACL and LCL in his knee during that game in the Eastern Conference semifinals against Miami last year. You also look at this team, and Jared Jackson Jr. Will start the season recovering from that stress fracture in his foot. He's likely not to play until sometime in January. So we know how much of a defensive anchor he was for this team. He was actually my defensive player of the year last year, even though he didn't win the award. I watched Memphis play. If you were in the spaces last year, we cashed a lot on Memphis team total first quarter, first half. The market just was not pricing it correctly, and we cashed out on the over 29.5, over 30.5, and a large part of that was Steven Adams and Jared Jackson Jr. ability to not only play defense, but to rebound in the basketball. You did not get a lot of second chance opportunity playing against this Memphis Grizzlies team. I think that the totals will still be high, and I would still probably only be able to look towards the over. This Memphis Grizzlies team loves to get out and pace, run out and play, extremely fast pace. Also, guys like Steven Adams and Jared Jackson Jr. do a lot of contributions, not only on the defensive rebounding perspective, but also on the offensive rebounding perspective. This team was one of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounding team throughout the playoffs. I'm sorry, not the playoffs, throughout the regular season last year. So even when they weren't making the wide open 3-pointers that they were getting from, Tyus Jones or Ja Morant's assists, they would still get a lot of offensive rebounds. I'm not sure where Steven Adams ranked, Jared Jackson Jr. ranked, but this team did a great job of rebounding the ball last year. I only anticipate that to continue. But you lose a guy like Jared Jackson Jr., and I do think that that's going to impact the offense just a tad bit, the ability to be able to space the floor. Brandon Clark is a guy who probably, first of all, he played extremely well last year in the playoffs, right? We saw him come in and make key contributions. And he's probably going to slide into that starting role for the Memphis Grizzlies this year. I think he's a guy you definitely have to target if you're looking at player props, because the value is going to be there. I think, just based on his athleticism, his ability to be able to rebound the ball, his ability to hopefully step into this position to take over for Jared Jackson Jr. until he comes back, I think plays a significant role in him being able to get to, whatever they put his player props at, specifically the rebounding edge. He's a guy that doesn't really extend the floor a lot, not to the likes of Jared Jackson Jr. So we'll have to look at spacing issues as well for this team. But all in all, I think, they're primed to make a deep run in the Western Conference again this year. You take a look at the standings for the Western Conference and how things kind of played out last year. You look at, of course, the Phoenix Suns finished first, but this Memphis Grizzlies team finished second last year. They won 56 games, won 56-26, finishing 3 games above the Golden State Warriors, who dipped towards the end of the season. Dallas Mavericks, of course, got better. I broke down the Golden State Warriors yesterday. I think that they still got better, and they will go over there. They win more than 51, 52 games this year. So it's going to be interesting to see, where this Memphis Grizzlies team, kind of lands. I do think that the Dallas Mavericks will, give them a nice run for the East for that division. And you can actually get the Dallas Mavericks at plus money right now, as the Memphis Grizzlies are favored to win the division right now. So that, that's something I think that, should be taken into consideration. As far as like the actual schedule, like I said, this team won 56 games last year. They won the Southwest Division. They're projected to win 51.5 games this year. So I think the books are telling us that with Jared Jackson Jr. being out, and we have to also take into consideration, if Jared Jackson Jr. comes back in January as anticipated, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get the Jared Jackson Jr. that we're going to see in March or May, right? Like, he'll slowly be integrated back into, the offense and, into the team. Probably not, ramping up his minutes at all. It'll be a slow transition. So this team will, I think, suffer. Whenever you have one of the better defensive players in the league and he's not going to play for an extended period of time, that's 3 to 4 months, I think they'll take a step back defensively. Guys will still play extremely hard, but Brandon Clark his role is going to be expanded. The Xavier Tillman, his role is going to be expanded as well. Some of these big guys. So the books are telling us that they don't expect the Memphis Grizzlies to play as well as they played last year. And I would agree with that. I think that they could get the 52 wins, but it wouldn't surprise me if they won 50 games. So I don't have I don't think that they win 56 games next year, but because the books have already adjusted the total down to 51.5 and only predicting this team to win 52 games, I don't have a strong opinion on whether I think they go over or under on that. They're still extremely young, so I don't think that they're going to rest guys on nights. But like I said, the impact of Jaren Jackson Jr., losing DeAnthony Milton, I think, will play a role. And I'm not willing to put a futures play in on the team total at all right now. I hope that makes sense. As far as strength of schedule, they do have the 23rd most difficult schedule, or you can flip that and say they have the 7th most easiest schedule. You look at their schedule at the beginning, they get a lot of primetime games. Of course, they're the Memphis Grizzlies, right? John Morant's not only one of the better point guards in the league, but he's also entertainer. So, this team's going to be on TV. They host the New York Knicks on Wednesday, which is the second night of the second opening night of the NBA this year. Then they get the Houston Rockets, which, both of these should be winnable games. They go to Dallas, which that'll be a really good game, and that's an NBA TV game. But then you get the Brooklyn Nets at home, which, will also probably be a really good game. Then they go on a 4-game road trip to start the season on October 27th. They go to Sacramento, to Utah on back-to-back days, and to Portland. All extremely winnable games, all teams that we anticipate not to even make the playoffs this year. Then they get Charlotte and Washington, which, are all winnable games as well. So a favorable schedule to start the season as well, before going to Boston. But even after coming home and hosting Boston, you only travel to San Antonio. They'll get Minnesota, which is another ESPN game. So definitely some winnable games, and I think this team starts off on the right season this year. And that's kind of my synopsis on the Memphis Grizzlies, man. Anybody got any thoughts they want to chime in on the Memphis Grizzlies? Hope you guys found that breakdown helpful. I see Will requesting up, so I'm going to get to him. And then if anybody else want to speak, they definitely can. Will, I appreciate you being here this early on this Sunday morning, bro. Definitely share your thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies.
Right. I got some thoughts, man. I asked you about the Grizzlies. When were you going to do them last week? And I'm here now. All right, so I'm from Memphis. I might be a little biased, but hear me out. Jaren Jackson not being on the floor is going to affect us because if he wasn't blocking the shots, he's definitely altering the shots, all right? Mm-hmm. The re-signing of Tyus Jones was great. I think that's going to help us. I think that was good. Like you said, man, I don't know what to expect this year because we really blew out the expectations last year.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of nervous to bet the over on the wins, but I bet them to win the finals because I think 20-1 is kind of really good odds on that. But hey, like you said, man, I don't know how we're gonna play without Jaren Jackson. I mean, we're gonna do well, but he's definitely gonna our defense won't be as good. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, bro. And I think, like you said, the defense won't be as good, even though you still got a guy like Steven Adams. And I think that the team plays, pretty good team defense as well. Well, you guys play pretty good team defense, but whenever you take you take a guy off the floor that has the defensive caliber of Jaren Jackson Jr., I mean, this guy is he's so lengthy, so athletic. He alters so many shots. Like you said, he blocks so many shots. He rebounds the ball so well. When you take him off the floor for, an extended period of time, I just don't see this team, getting back to what they did last year, like you said, because they blew out the expectations. And I'm not saying that they missed the playoffs or anything crazy like that, but I do think that, winning 50 games, winning 51 games is probably spot on. I think the books got it right, which if I don't find value in, if I don't find a big enough edge that makes me want to bet it, then it's easier for me just to kind of stay off. So I would agree with your assessment on that, Will. I'm super high on the Memphis Grizzlies, though. Like you said, I do think that re-signing Tyus Jones is a big piece because him and Ja, they work well together. They love each other. It's a camaraderie in that locker room that doesn't feel like it's in a lot of locker rooms. And this team, they're all about the next man up mentality. They play well. They play for each other. They play well. They're young, and I think they just have a really good vibe in that locker room. So I'm a big fan of watching this team play. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to bet their win total over. I will be watching them play a lot. Already got league pass for the season. Can't wait for NBA basketball. And, we get it really, really soon. Friday starts the NBA preseason, which is why I'm doing these team previews. But I love your analysis on that, Will. It sounds like while you are a fan, you're not necessarily, extremely biased. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention, Will, you talked about them winning the title at a 20-1 odds. I would only be able to sprinkle on that as well. 20-1 seems, just a tad bit disrespectful for what they were able to do last year. And we look at the Western Conference. Of course, it got a lot better, but those odds are crazy. Yeah, those are crazy. So yeah, I would definitely put a sprinkle on that as well. Something that you can kind of cash out based on how they're doing throughout the season, also. And if some of these teams in the Western Conference have injuries, because that's the one thing that we can't predict. That's another thing to kind of take into consideration as well. Their odds will probably only go up from there. So I like your assessment on that, Will. Appreciate you being here, of course. If anybody else got thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies, I kind of touched on the Detroit Pistons already, did their preview for this year. But if you guys have thoughts, definitely request up. But like I said, wanted to do a quick show. I put it into motion and said I was doing 2 teams a day, every day, even on NFL Sunday. And that's what I'm here to do. If you guys are over on YouTube, definitely, like the video, comment, subscribe. It just helps the channel grow. Give me your thoughts. I see Benjamin says he was excited. He's excited about his Pistons. So I appreciate you being here. And he said David Roddy will be a dog. I also agree with that as well. I'm interested to see what these young players do. Like, I think the draft wasn't, that a lot of people didn't have high expectations for the draft, but kind of going back and looking at some of these players, kind of watching, where they went as far as their development. I think I'm pretty excited to see what these guys can do, depending on how much of a role they have on the teams that they were drafted to, respectfully. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited for NBA basketball. And like I said, we get it really, really soon. If you missed any of this, feel free to, like I said, jump over on YouTube and rewatch the breakdown. I've done pretty much every team, man. It's crazy to think, but there's only 2, 4, 6, 8, only 8 teams left. Appreciate you guys for being over here on the YouTube channel as well. Tomorrow we have looking ahead, we have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Portland Trail Blazers. We get Damian Lillard back for Portland. There's some controversy going on. They're not trying to, shed too much light on in Milwaukee with Chris Middleton not wanting to re-sign. He hasn't put the pen to the paper and re-sign that deal. So that's going to look a tad bit interesting. And we'll get into all of that tomorrow. Also, for you guys who are diehard NBA fans like me that are here in the chat, check out these NBA media days. Today is a big day in the NBA. Tomorrow will be as well. There's team previews or media day previews for these teams today and tomorrow. They started on Friday with the Atlanta Hawks and the Washington Wizards today. I know there's actually one going on right now. The Milwaukee Bucks are doing theirs right now, so I'm definitely going to tune into that before watching some NFL football. But tomorrow is a big day. I would recommend going to Google, typing in NBA Media Day. You guys will get a link to every to be able to access Media Day for all of these teams. Starting tomorrow is a big day. I think pretty much every single team has their Media Day tomorrow. So definitely, something to watch, just to kind of see how the coaches are talking, how the players are talking, how the players are looking, right? Like what their expectations are for their own team. They'll be taking questions from the media. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys, man. Quick show, kind of rapid fire, 30 minutes. Appreciate you guys for being here as always. Will, you got anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I do. So I do think Brandon Clark's role is going to increase this year a bunch. I mean, from rookie year, I thought that he should have started. Obviously, the coaches know more than me. But yeah, with Jaren Jackson out, Brandon Clark heating up against Minnesota, man, that was big. So I do think his role is going to increase.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned him targeting him from a player prop perspective. Well, I think he plays a big role, and there'll be a lot of value probably earlier more than later, because I do expect the lines to adjust. But I think he's going to get a lot of playing time, a lot of playing time. So I appreciate your comments and your commentary for sure. We'll appreciate you guys for being here. Tune in with me tomorrow, man. 5:15 Eastern time. Milwaukee Bucks, Portland Trail Blazers. Until then, best of luck on your MLB bets if you're playing MLB today. And of course, your NFL bets, man. You guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.
All right, bro. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you being here, bro.